up for grabs now!
Magic ball from Bergkamp to Patrick Vieira!
Oh, would you believe it? Oh, right, what a way to get it!
Fabulous solo goal by Thierry Henry.
Good evening, everybody. Welcome to another episode of Arsenal Lounge Weekly Podcast with Mr. Mo Haidar in the house and Tom. How are you guys?
Very good. Yeah,
enjoying the circus.
My fellow Arsenal Lounger, Lev, how are you doing? You all right, son?
I don't know where to start today. I'm
All
quite
right,
excited, to be honest with you. So let's just do this.
Just before we start, I thought we start on a little positive.
Really?
Yeah, and I think congratulations are in order for this young man from Gooner Talk TV for his latest nomination. Do you
cheers,
want to tell
mate.
us about it, Tom?
Yeah, sure can do. I feel that this is taking things in the complete wrong direction for the
No,
negativity that's going to come forth. We got nominated for Best Club Content Creator alongside some great nominees. So thanks for that, Shane. And
Well done.
Mike from the Gooners Pod actually made a website that crafts a tweet for you. So if you go to like www.votefortgt.com, it actually writes a tweet for you. I don't know if it works, but it does for a few people. So there you go.
Well,
Congrats.
well, very, very well
Thanks,
done,
guys. Thanks.
Tom, and hopefully bigger and better things.
Can I also highlight a positive, by the way?
Go on.
You're free. They've released you. Look at the background.
I know. You see, when I don't have the board, we lose 5-0, Mr. Mo. So keep a note of that. That's why we have the board there. Anyway,
But the board exists, and also they haven't released you because Kolasinac is still at the club. So your lookalikes are still.
He took it there.
I know, man. I know. I have to think of who you look like more, and then I'll come back to you on that. But anyway, you know what? I was thinking about this all day, and I was thinking where to start. Okay, and I struggled because there are so many things to start. Poor game. You know, should we start with the game? Should we start with what happened after the game? Should we start with what's happening today? Transfers, limited time, and we're only doing this podcast for an hour. So I'm going to ask all of you very quickly to give us your thoughts on the game, and then we go on to the second segment. So I'll start with you, Lev. What was your thoughts on the game? Just try to keep it like a minute if you can.
A shower of shit. Basically, it was like, pardon my French, but that's the only way I could explain it. I mean, when you first looked at the lineup, we all knew as fans, you look at that lineup, you know we're in trouble. None of it made any sense. Players playing that shouldn't be there. Kolasinac, 1 minute he's on his way out, next minute he's in a starting lineup. Xhaka was, we all know the story behind Xhaka, etc. Odegaard in an 8. Which, I kind of predicted that we'd be using him as an 8 here and there, but not with someone like Xhaka behind him, who can't cover the ground required. It was just a weird lineup, and we expected the worst, and boy, did we get it. And 5-0 is all I'm going to say. I don't even want to go into it. I'm still scarred by the whole thing, to be honest with you.
Fair enough.
Is that quick enough for you?
Yes, very good. Thank you.
Oh yeah, I mean, where do you start? It was painful from the perspective of someone like myself, I defended Arteta a lot last season. I really did defend him, and so it was painful to see your opinion basically picked up, screwed up into a very tight ball and thrown in your face with that team selection, which is how it felt. The naive. I asked for 3 at the back. I got 3 at the back, but I didn't ask for Kolasinac, and I didn't ask for Martin Odegaard to be playing as a number 6. It was really odd. It was like it was a manager in his final guesswork, rolling the dice, and that's how it felt. And I think the result was not what he wanted at all. And I think I tweeted out before the game, I was like, if we get anything, it's either absolute genius or complete dumb luck. And I think that we kind of know the answer to that now.
Fair enough. Well,
Yeah, for me, I mean, I looked at the lineup. I wanted the back. People call it a back 3. I call it a back 5 because that's a reality, And I so I was happy with that bit, but like Tom's just said, when you saw the people that made up that back five, I was shocked because on one hand I thought Kolasinac was leaving the club, but then he's playing in the last couple of games. Could the same not occur for Hector Bellerin then? Because I would have thought that he'd be a better right-back choice, or Maitland-Niles. I would have thought he'd be a better right-back choice. He didn't really make much sense to me at all. And then for me, the worst thing out of the whole formation was the absolute lack of presence in central midfield. It was basically Xhaka by himself. And in a way, maybe he thought himself, this is flipping stupid. I'd rather get an early bath because, he seemed to forfeit his own game. It was such a stupid tackle. I just couldn't believe that against the team in the Premier League that is so midfield rich. They're not very forward rich, but they're so midfield rich. Our midfield to combat that was unbelievably poor, even by our standards. Where was Sambi? Xhaka can't really cover the ground too much. Even Ødegaard, if he was an 8, is Ødegaard truly box to box? So for me, the formation was awful. And that set the tone. I don't even need to go on in terms of what happened on the pitch. It all followed from the awful selection.
Yeah, well, all very good assessment. For me, I mean, I did a fan cam for Mo's channel as well, which you guys can follow or go out for after game reactions to his channel, which is really good. For me, we lost the game when
Congrats
the
on
lineup
the
came.
25k, Mo, by the way, just while you got that.
Oh yes, that is right. Congratulations to Mo as well for reaching 25,000. You started your channel very recent as well. I totally forgot about that because I was actually going to mention that. Man.
Let me just nip in there because, Tom, you've said that. Thank you very much as well. But I have to say, man, like yesterday on Twitter, I just said I'm 172 away from 25k. Since that point, over 500 new subscribers. And so I just have to say thank you so much. I'm running out of ways to show my appreciation for people because that sort of reaction is just incredible. So yeah, just wanted to say that quickly.
Mo, I can tell you something. You don't get 25,000 in YouTube subs for no reason. So you're doing something good and well, and people like it. That's why they sub. So well done and keep it up, man.
Yes, thanks, man.
In terms of the game, I thought we lost the game when the lineups came out, and I agree with Tom. It seems to me, it feels like Emery's last days, where he was trying unorthodox things from things that does not make sense to anybody. And that lineup, you're right, Tom. Everybody wanted 3 at the back, but not those personnel. He plays Xhaka and El Neni together sometimes. Maybe that was the game to play Xhaka and El Neni to give some, to beef up the midfield a little bit. And then Xhaka does that, but then the game was lost, I think, before the tackle. And as I said, for me, this was worse than that 8-2 we had at Old Trafford, because that day you could actually see something, but there was nothing that I could see from that game. Nothing that would give me any hope or any sense of positivity. Nothing. Bad performance, bad result, and it was exactly what Arteta and the club didn't need. And I come to this, guys, and I'm gonna go the other way around. So I start with Lev and I work my way. I'll start with Mo going the other way. Mo, that 5-0 defeat. Who is that on? Because is it on the manager? That there's an argument to say, listen, it's got nothing to do with Mikel Arteta. When you got somebody like Gundogan that gets a header on top of Callum Chambers. Is it on him? Is it on the players? Was it the tactics? What do you think? What would you say is the most important? Is the main culprit of that loss?
For me, it's Arteta. On a day where all 4 of us are in unanimous agreement that before even the players have stepped foot on the pitch, we feel like significant errors have been made in just the lineup. I think then on those days it's the manager. Now, yes, Chambers, awful. I really looked at that goal actually, and I believe that very often at this level, this high level of football, you'll get moments of perfection in games where it's very, very hard. And that's why moments of perfection, they end up in goals because everything has to be perfect because the level is so high. And I thought to myself, was it just that it was a moment of perfection where you turn around and you say, well, actually, the pass into him was perfect. The pass into him was perfect. The cross into him was perfect. The header was perfect. Far, far from it. There was no perfection about that Man City goal. Chambers' positioning, his awareness, his sort of like mobility as that very obvious cross is coming in was very, very awful. And then in terms of Bernd Leno, keeping that out, again, very, very poor. This was not a moment of perfection. And so the reason I mention that is because this completely was on Chambers. But then we have to ask the question, why is Chambers the one playing there? Why is Saliba out on loan and Chambers is playing there? So again, that's on the manager. This is the manager's man management style. I'll exile who I want for whatever reason, and I'll play whoever I want, in whatever position I want, in whatever system I want, whether they understand it, whether it suits them or not. So I'm afraid, it's on the manager.
Tom?
Yeah, it can't be on anything else other than as we talked about, the tactics have been wrong for not just this game, but team selections have been strange for weeks, and that goes back into the end of last season when we were making strange choices. Go back to Emile Smith-Rowe playing as a false nine in the Europa League semi-final. Like there are persistent errors being made, and I think this is something like 5 changes was made from the Chelsea game or something, and you can't be chopping and changing that many players in your 3rd game of the season. Like, I think Manchester City, we know that they're heavy in their rotation, but I think this was something like the first time since 2017 that Pep Guardiola named the same starting 11 twice in successive games. And when he does rotate, it's not heavy. Like, it's usually around 2 players, if that, on average, that change. And Arteta's changing 5 players each week, and that's just the biggest sign that he doesn't have trust in his players, that he doesn't know his best team, that he doesn't know who's going to show up. Yes, we've got these injury issues, but they're injury things that have happened. Like the Partey thing we haven't had all season, Gabriel we've not had all season. So there are things that we were always going to be ready for. It's just I can't get my head around the Kolasinac thing. It's so strange. It's a really strange thing to have done, especially when the player that you've invested in, Nuno Tavares, is sitting on the bench. And we know that Kieran Tierney, if you want to play a back 3, can play as a left centre-back. And in fact, did it excellently against Manchester City in an FA Cup semi-final. So I find it so weird that you would choose to go with a player that you know is leaving. And actually, who I thought got roasted by a lot of West Brom's under-23s in the League Cup game. And he was far from one of our better players in that game in the League Cup. So testing him against Manchester City is strange. And you've also got Pablo Mari on the bench. And I know that we've criticised Pablo Mari, but at least he's a natural centre-back and he's left-footed and you could play him there. There was lots of choices that he could have done that would have made a lot more sense. And I think it was kind of typified by when Xhaka got sent off. And I know we're going to talk about that. But when Xhaka got sent off and he didn't bring on a centre midfielder until half-time, and we were 2-0 when we went down to 10 men, and we didn't bring anyone on. And unsurprisingly, we went 3-0 down before half time. And that again, typified kind of where we were in that moment.
Yeah. Lev, over the weekend, I watched a few different games. One of the games I watched was Marseille's 5-0 win against
You're talk about
Saint-Étienne.
Saliba now, aren't you?
Right. So I watched that game. I watched Chelsea-Liverpool game. And I watched Man United Wolves, right? And each game had a point for me, and I'm going to put them to you. So on the Marseille game, Guendouzi scored, hit the post once and set up another goal. Saliba, he wasn't amazing, but he was better than Kolasinac and Chambers, right? Chelsea and Liverpool game, there was 2 teams that they were set up to counter each other, to nullify the other team's strength. You could see that there's a plan here. There's tactics. There's a chess game here. And I was watching Man United versus Wolves, and I was watching, that Traore guy, and I was thinking, fuck, if he plays against Arsenal, what is he going to do to our? Who's going to stop him? And then again with Liverpool, I was thinking, look at the difference between these 2 managers, right? Playing a top team, and look at the difference between that and the Man City game. So, is Saliba really worse than Kolasinac? Because I'll tell you something, right? And please, all 3 of you, correct me if I'm wrong, right? I don't see it. I don't see Gundogan getting a header over Saliba. I don't see that happening. So what is that, man?
Well, look, I think one of the major things that has come under scrutiny for me with Arteta is actually identifying the right types of players and quality players, because this is not making sense to me, right? Chambers, incidentally, has never been able to break into our first team consistently since the time we've had him. What have we seen since he's returned that suddenly has convinced Arteta that he's a first team starter ahead of someone like Saliba? And incidentally, you mentioned Saliba. These are his stats from the game, right? 96%. I think he was like the tackles that he'd won, the duels that he went in for. 8 out of 10. I think that was duels. 96% was like tackles. I think 8 out of 10 was one-on-one duels, and 6 out of 6 successful passes or whatever it is to his opponent, to his teammates. Sorry to say. This is a guy that I've watched him since he's gone out on loan. All right, yes, it's the French league, but do not tell me he's not more accomplished and a better footballer, as well as stronger, quicker. He's 6'4". Do not tell me he's not better than Holding, who he consistently continues to play, regardless, as his main centre back. The Kolasinac one has already been mentioned. What the hell's going on there? And you mentioned those games that you saw. I'd watched some of those games. Look at when Chelsea went down to 10 men. Did they look like they were going to concede? Because they looked like a team that was well drilled and knew exactly what was expected from them. And they looked at every tackle, every block as like they celebrated it like a goal. It was a totally different mentality. It was chalk and cheese. So, I mean, you know, there's some strange decisions. Even you could even go with the Ainsley Maitland-Niles, right? For me, we discussed this on the show a few times. He tried a few people right back. For me, he was probably the best out of the people he tried, right? And this is somebody that he broke into the international squad as a right back for us, okay? So he was doing a really, really good job. Of course, he was going to make some mistakes. He's not a fullback, but the news has come out as well from Ornstein that he was saying that he'd come back this season and he said, you know what, maybe I've made a mistake. I want to play right back. I want to break back into the first team and the England team. Why are we not playing it? And he's gone with like the likes of Kolasinac on the left, and it's just very strange. And nothing is making sense to me. The Guendouzi thing don't make sense to me. Do not tell me he's not better than El Neni. Some argue that El Neni's a DM, so Guendouzi's not really a DM. He's more box to box. Have we addressed the DM situation? No, we haven't. So these are things that all fall at Arteta's lap, because at the end of the day, he's the one that's putting this team together. He's the one seeing whatever it is he's seeing, and none of us see it. So serious questions have to be asked about him as a manager now. He's not ready, and I think he's the way he judges a player has to be highly scrutinized. It's just not making any sense.
Just for balance, then, yeah. So we're talking about, why were these players playing? Obviously, if Arteta was here, he'd be saying, "Well, I've got my first choice centre back pairing out injured." He can't pick White and Gabriel, otherwise he would have obviously picked them. So that's just for balance. That he had to do something, but I know that all four of us think that in spite of that fact, and I'm only mentioning it because we haven't mentioned it, he still got it wrong. Kolasinac, for example, he hasn't played left-sided centre-back. Tierney has on many occasions. Yet there's so much reliance on Tierney to do something for us going forward that even though Tierney's played there before, he didn't want to play him there against Man City. And he played Kolasinac there, who was like, well, no one expected that. Also, we're comparing what Saliba did in one game in France. Obviously, that level, that team is nowhere near Man City's level. So it could equally have been awful even with Saliba playing. But the point is, no matter what happens, you still have to make the right decisions at a point in time. And it just feels like with Saliba and Kolasinac being on Arsenal's books, the wrong decision has been made. And whatever the journey you've got to make that decision, the wrong decision is being made when you're going to the best team in the country away from home and playing Kolasinac, not Saliba. It doesn't make sense to me.
No. You say that, right? And I heard this argument. I've seen it on Twitter going around and so on. So, but once Mikel Arteta got promoted 2 seasons ago, he's part of the recruitment team. So the players that are coming in and going out, he's got a direct influence and say over them. So this argument that we don't have the right, players, and I think that is done now. He's finished because he's had a couple of transfer windows to get the players that he wants. Willian which I respect him for the way he's left Arsenal. I will come to that. Is his signing Cedric, Mari? These are all his signings. They're not being good. It's not good enough, and we're all agreeing, Mo, that this is all strange decisions. So it's either all four of us don't know much about football, which I doubt, or that because a lot of other fans are not getting it. When is this? You see, I've discussed this with you guys before as well. Where is this line, right? That the board will look at this and they will go like, this is uncomfortable now. He needs to go. Because for me, that line was end of last season. That's me, right? A lot of people are saying, we did a poll on Twitter a couple of days ago. I think 74%, they wanted him out. And there was a very minor percentage they wanted to give him time, and the rest was undecided, right? So this is where I want you guys input on this. Where is this line? Where is this line that the board would say if this is crossed, he needs to go?
I don't think there is a line, to be honest. I don't think that there is a line because it's a really difficult kind of reason to come up with, because your mind tells you that in any profession anywhere, if this was happening in a different scenario, that you would move that person on and get someone else in that's doing a better job, because clearly we're regressing right now. We're going backwards, and if you're going backwards, you usually need to change out the parts, and it usually is the managing perspective of that kind of machine that you change out. And
Tom, in support of what you're saying, as we're doing this show right now, right? Arsenal have spent the most money in this transfer window, right? And we're bottom of the league. No goals have scored, and it doesn't look good. You got a manager that is everybody is questioning, right? So surely there has to be a line somewhere. I know you're saying there is no line, but I don't know. Relegation is the line. I don't know. Where is it?
It's the thing, isn't it? Like we're bottom of the league after 3 games, and the argument will be that that's not a long enough time for them to say, "Are we relegation candidates right now?" That's the argument that will be thrown back to you from the ownership's perspective. The whole thing about money is weird, and that's where I get confused, and I'm still looking for kind of clarity on that side of things, because for me, what we've spent this summer, we've needed to spend. Like we've had to bring in the players that we've brought in. We needed to bring in a backup keeper that was arguably had the potential to take over Leno, because Leno is showing not to be good enough. So whoever we brought in to be back up to him had to have the potential to overtake him eventually. And that's why we invested as much as we did in Ramsdale. You've got a backup left back coming in. You've added depth to the centre part of the midfield. We needed to improve centre back. I mean, the Man City game proved that we needed to add improvement in that area at centre back. So we've done that. And we still need to bring in my view, a quality right back, and we need to bring in a quality centre mid. And of course, Odegaard came in because we had to add the number in the attacking midfield position. And I thought that was a good signing. I rate the signings we've made. I like those signings. The problem is that it's not enough. And we've actually the club's put ourselves in a position where we're saying this is kind of a stick to not necessarily beat the ownership or the management to say we've spent the most we've ever spent in a summer window. We've spent more than anyone else, and yet we're still bottom of the table. But the fact of the matter is that the reason why we've spent that much this window is because the poor recruitment of the last 10 years has led us to a point where we're 130 million behind where we need to be, arguably more. And we should be going into the 2021 window knowing that we're going to spend 130 million on 2 or 3 players that are guaranteed starters and transformative, like Alexis Sanchez was, like Mesut Ozil was when he first came in. That's where we should be in 2021. But we're not, because we've made silly decisions and renewed contracts of players that weren't necessarily the right ones to renew. And we've experimented with signings. And we've experimented not just with signings, but we've experimented with appointments with managers and executives in the recruitment sector as well. And that's why, yes, we've spent loads of money and we're still 20th, but we had to spend that money and we had to spend it quite well. And I rate the signings. I'd love to get your guys' thoughts on this, because the Edu conundrum is a real tough one for me. Because I think the managerial thing is nearly a moot point of discussion, because I think it's so unanimous in how we feel about the need to change manager. The ownership's the same. All of us feel like that we need to change the ownership. Edu is a really odd one. and I'll pitch the idea of him staying, is that I can't fault too many of his decisions that he's made. The biggest criticisms for me with Edu are the things that haven't yet happened. And I can't categorically say that they haven't happened because of his choice or because of limitations from the ownership that we don't know about. Like, we haven't spent on a centre mid or a right back. Is that because he chose not to, or because we weren't able to, because he wasn't allowed to spend any more money than we already have without moving on players, which has proven to be a ridiculously difficult job for a guy that didn't bring those surplus players in, bar Willian, of course. So, and Rodderson, I suppose. But yeah, I'd love to get your thoughts on that, because the Edu situation really does conflict me.
Shaheen, can I add to that then? Yeah.
No, just before you add to that, I just want to just make a point on what Tom said, and I want to put that point to you. Tom said we made quite few signings. Is there an argument to say, countering what Tom said, that all the signings that we've made is possibly for the future? None of them is for right now to improve the team. What you call a B team signing. Is that, am I wrong, or is that an argument?
Well, I think what
point opposite of what Tom said.
I think what Tom's saying has, he's got a valid point up to a certain point, because some of the signings that Edu's made, we're not going to really be able to judge until we see them play consistently. And I think that's what Tom's saying. It's hard to judge him right now based on the signings, because it could come, we could, in a season or two, we're going, oh my God, that Ben White was a great signing. Oh my God, Ramsdale, what a great signing. You don't know. But the problem I have when we're talking about recruitment in general, and funnily enough, I've got another little snip I could show you guys. This is how much what we've spent since Wenger left. There's £420 million worth of transfers there. If you go through this list, I was appalled at some of the signings. Look at them. Liechtensteiner was on a free. Okay. Lucas Torreira, we know how that worked out. Socrates, we know how that worked out. Suarez, we know how that worked out. The list goes on. Ceballos, we know how that worked out on loan. Mari, Cedric. I mean, the list goes on.
Willian.
It's a ridiculous.
Interesting, Lev. You have this on the screen. You see most of these big signings, right? The ones we spend money on from before. Most of them, if you look, they all walked away for free. Lacazette is going to be another one. That he's going to walk away for free, apparently. And that is one of the problems at Arsenal Football Club. I feel too many of these players have walked away for free. We've spent 40 million on them, walked away for free. No sell-on, no recouping money. Remember, Liverpool sold Coutinho, and that was the catalyst, I think, for the change, because the money that they've got, they went under, they bought Alisson, Van Dijk, and improved them. We don't have that sort of player to sell for big money. Even the ones we have with, like Willock, right? We do a deal for 20. That's the most expensive one this window that we've done. So I think that is also an interesting point. But carry on.
More to speak is how many of them turned out not to be good enough is my concern, because there's a severe problem we're having at the moment with recruitment in general. So it's a difficult enough job as it is for Arteta and the likes of Edu, but they have, and we said this about Arteta when he first came into the job, he's inherited all of this mess that has culminated over several years, not just 1 or 2 seasons that he's been there. This is a mess that he's inherited that even now when you look at it, even then it screams out more that we needed someone extremely experienced to come in. I mean, you're not just asking a young coach to come in and sort of start afresh and bring in new ideas. You're asking him to come in and deal with several years worth of pain that somebody without the experience is not going to be able to cope with. So really, we've given him an unenviable, impossible job. We've set him up to fail. And what stands out for me more than anything in this is the weakness of the board, because they have been the guys giving this money to the people that they themselves have hired, and when it comes to it, they're not even strong enough to make those difficult decisions to get rid of the person if they're not good enough in time. And they've waited and they've waited and they've waited, and look where we are right now. For me, it's a board issue. Yes, Arteta's not good enough. He's not ready, but it's a board issue. And that's where I'm going with this.
Mo, Lev says it's a board issue, right? I would say it's a transfer committee issue, and one committee that Arteta is part of with Edu. What's your take on Edu following what Tom said?
I always say about Edu, it's very hard to judge the people in the behind the scenes roles. So let's say, for example, Edu in the last 24 hours in the transfer window signs 2 really, really good players. All of a sudden, does that make him a good technical director or a good director of football? I wouldn't say that's the entirety of his role, but 2 flashy signings will sway our fan base in thinking, oh, Edu's great, or we're happy with Edu. The reality is there's a lot more to it than that. And so it's hard because I can't come up with like hard and fast, tangible reasons and facts as to why Edu's good or not good. But my feeling is that there's no signs to suggest that he's doing a good job. That's my feeling. One thing that is evident to us, is visible to us, is the transfer record, and the transfer record does concern me. The use of our funds does concern me. Earlier on, Tom made the point that we needed to sign a backup goalkeeper. Agree with that. He needed to be good enough to take the spot from Leno when the time comes. I agree with that. But in a market where we're seeing so many loan with obligation to buy sort of deals, why was that not pursued? So we can focus on improving the first team in this urgent season of need, for example. Had we said the obligation to buy kicks in next summer and Ramsdale becomes permanent then and the funds leave then, fair enough. At least we can address the first team with that £24 million, the 11 players that need to go out. Against Man City, look at our back 5, look at our midfield, but we had £24 million signing on the bench. It's these things that don't make sense to me. And they're evident examples of where Edu, I feel like, is not coming up with some sort of like lateral thinking or, novel ideas. And that's what frustrates me. When I look at David Dein, who, yes, made a huge mistake in sort of the direction the club went to, in a way you could argue that. Some people might argue opposite, but in terms of selling the shares to Cronkies or getting other people involved, he was that sort of guy who was very, very well. He had a very good contact list, and he was very sort of good at surprising you with something out of the ordinary. He knew more than we did. I would look at David Dein and I would think to myself, whoa, I never would have done that. That was really smart. That was really clever. That was brave, and you pulled this off. And I felt like it takes 100, maybe 50 to 100 of those types of decisions, some small, some big, but that's how you make those marginal gains and make a difference. Now with Edu, I'm not really seeing what his biggest accomplishment is, So yeah, I'm afraid, as much as I can't with confidence say he's rubbish because I'm not there behind the scenes and his job is a behind the scenes job, I don't see any signs to make me think, yeah, he's benefiting the club.
Mo, can I just say something? Yeah. If you looked at Edu's CV and you were hiring someone for that job, would you give him that job?
Absolutely not. It's a brilliant question.
You see,
that's where I go with the owners. Sorry, Shaheen. David Dein, we had Charlie Nicholas on the other day. He was saying David Dein was the sort of guy who would go to Arsene Wenger and say, you tell me who you want, I'll go and get him. It was as simple as that, right? Yeah. He was heavily linked with the FA. He's heavily linked with FIFA. He was heavily linked with everybody. That's a sort of that's what you look for in someone in that position. How are we giving these guys these jobs? That's my issue.
Well, you see, Lev, that's exactly what I was just going to say, because we've got an experienced manager, an experienced director of football, an experienced chief executive, and owners who don't know much about football. And then we're seeing the result of that. At halftime, Man United against Wolves, I saw Mike Phelan in deep conversation with Solskjaer. I don't know if you saw that. And I compared that to Arsenal, and I was thinking, who is in the Arsenal coaching setup that would be that wise, old, experienced head that would tell Mikel Arteta, listen, maybe X and Y, Z, shouldn't have been done. Moving on to the other segment of the show. Just before we move on, I just want to ask.
I just want to make one last point, Shaheen. Very often in football, people talk about the importance of a spine. And when they're talking about that, they're generally saying your goalkeeper, your centre-back, out of the two, one centre-back, one midfielder, one striker, and they talk about that spine, yeah? That's the second most important spine that football clubs have. The most important spine is owner, chairman, sort of director of football, manager, that sort of spine. That's the most important. And when you look at our spine,
It's
in that
non-existent.
respect, it's awful. And, we're talking about, would you have given Edu the job? Absolutely not. Because, on what basis can you say, look, his track record is good enough? On what basis was Arteta given the job? Again, I don't know. And you can't control the owner. Unfortunately, you don't need experience to buy something. You just need money. But on what basis was Josh Kroenke, who is just working for his daddy's company? I've always made this point. I cannot believe Arsenal are at that level where, daddy gives his son a job in Arsenal, a world-famous, world-loved organization. At that point, we should have been up in arms. That nepotism so clearly impacting the quality of personnel at our club.
You remember how we got our pants pulled down over Pepe? That what's that guy, Raul Sanelli? He got sacked because £10 million went walking, no one knows where. That was the reports that came out. So you're right. And going on to the other segment, just before I go on, I just want to ask three of you a question, just a yes or no. If you had the power, would you sack him tonight? Mo?
Yes.
Yes.
Yeah.
That's a full yes then. So, and I'm sure, guys, in the comment, please tell us, if you had the power, would you sack him? Yes or no? So
Tell you what,
I really want to know if
I
someone
wouldn't
says
trust
no,
the
why?
ownership to make the right choice afterwards, though. That's for sure.
That's different. That's different.
Based on what Mo's saying as well, the team is a
come to
reflection of the board, isn't it? It's
Yeah,
spineless.
we are going to come to that. So we need to kind of, we know we're in a mess now, and it's a deep hole we're in, and let's see if we can work out a way out of it. And I can see on the comments everybody's going yes. If you're watching this video afterwards, please put on the comments, would you sack him now? Yes or no? If no, why? Before I move forward, what's your thoughts on this Qatari takeover business? More.
Do you know what? I'm fed up of people using Arsenal for a bit of social media traction. Even Daniel Ek, he has not shown the required respect to the fans. Someone tell me right now, when was the last time you heard from Daniel Ek? Someone in the comments, any of you three, when was the last time he addressed the fans, updated us? He came out all guns blazing. It was all public, consortium, these players, this, that, the other. Patrick Vieira is now manager of of a team that's above us in the league. So what's going on with that? What about that conflict of interest? Thierry Henry, he's doing punditry for Amazon at the moment. What about, isn't he meant to be involved? What the hell's going on? So Daniel Ek, as far as I'm concerned, has not shown us the required respect that a fan base who's clearly emotionally invested in the club. He's not shown us that, and it's not a good starting point. And then on top of that, these Qataris, again, it's stupid conversations about daddy. My daddy will buy the club. My brother will buy the club. I'm sorry, you stupid children, shut up. I have to say, it takes an incredible amount of privilege, and it comes, and I'm sorry if I'm offending anyone here, but I'm just going to say it. It comes from being a man. And it comes from, in Josh Kroenke's sort of role, it comes from being a white man. That's the face of successful business. People are used to seeing white men as CEOs, yeah? And you can get away with it coming in to a club. It's like what Donald Trump did with his flipping children. What the hell are they doing there in the White House? Can you imagine if Emmanuel Aboué took over the club and had a little daughter, a little black girl running around the marble halls saying, yeah, I'm in a executive position at the club. The way we are being run is an absolute joke. And the fans, I think they're very selective in when they actually call someone out on it and when they don't. So just like the Qataris, just like Daniel Ek, we're all kind of like, oh yeah, it's great. No, it's not great. On one hand, we're saying to the current owners, we want a fans charter. We want fans to be involved. We want them to be shown respect. What respect is Daniel Ek showing us? What respect to the Qataris, this stupid fake takeover? What respect are they showing us? I'm really, really fed up of Arsenal as a club being run with not being run, but being sort of like manhandled like a toy, just thrown about like it's some sort of joke thing. We used to be a club of class and tradition and held in high regard, and now we're a mockery.
Yeah, look, listen, before I come to you guys on this, right, let me give you my take on this. I was actually, first of all, I think it's all bullshit. It's all rubbish, right? On a Saturday night, I was on this MySpace and Twitter, and it was some guy in MySpace, the Gooner Express, I think, and I was speaking to a gal, and I was listening to us, and then they brought a female. I don't even know what her name was, and she apparently knew. So this is what she said. So she was there to update everybody, and she said, the night before, I was in a different MySpace Twitter, and one of these guys was actually there. So I asked, what's happening with the takeover? And he said, oh, we're very interested, but we're going to keep it to end of the season, right? And then afterwards, I messaged him, and then we spoke directly on the phone. And then he told me, yeah, my brother is actually very interested. And I was flabbergasted, Mo, with the level of stupidity that was being spoken. One, if somebody wants to buy Arsenal Football Club, they're not going to come and speak to people on MySpace, Twitter. They're going to, if they want to show interest, they'll go proper channel, especially if they're Qataris.
Shaheen, sorry, this is what I'm talking about. Is this stupid level of entitlement? These Qataris, these billionaires, they just think, oh, because we've got money, we can do what we want. Again, it's that entitlement. They are the face of money. They're not used to being held accountable.
My point, Mo, is that us, like some fans, they actually buy this. They think this is real. Oh, please put it on Twitter. Come on, buy it. There is for all you know, is one Arab guy on the other side of the world. You don't even know who he is. Puts out a Twitter, oh, it's time to bring the Invincibles back, and everyone's all over it. And I hate this because people see us Arsenal fans suffering, and they'll just come and do these tweets, and they get everybody, they get a bit of traction out of it, and then they piss off. If you want to buy Arsenal Football Club, put your money where your mouth is, or fuck off.
And this is why I'm really annoyed about this. It's that entitlement that you think just because you're rich, you can rock up and get away with these things. Yeah. You know, you can like just mess around with it. It matters to people, man. It's just disrespectful to me. I just don't like seeing that. Things should be done in the right way.
And unfortunately, we have fans here that actually buy this story, and then they come and tell people, oh, I actually spoke to them. I was gobsmacked. Tom?
I wrote a piece on Football London about the Qatari takeover, and I spoke to a couple of people that are very much kind of, you know, they know their stuff about Qatari football, about investments and stuff to do with that. I spoke to specifically Mitch Freely, who is a Qatari football expert and does some work out in the Middle East as well. And his words on it were, I personally don't think this is something that is going to happen anytime soon. I feel that Qatar has significant investments in PSG, and that investment in PSG is far more important than going with Arsenal. I feel that they have invested too much for them to invest in another club. I think that there is a certain element of for show here. People do this to gain social media clout. He is obviously very cryptic and strange in his tweets. It is some kind of posturing, but I realistically think that the serious money in Qatar would not be looking to invest in Arsenal as a football club right now. And I mean, I'm releasing another article on kind of the Qatari situation a little bit later in the week, but the feeling is that, first of all, the guy that's tweeting gets confused with some other Qataris in kind of the royal family. He's not part of that kind of specific group. Like, people getting confused between the guy who's the brother of the Emir in Qatar. He's not that guy. He alone could not afford to buy Arsenal. From what I've understood about it, he would have to kind of form a consortium of people to have any chance of taking over. And there's a lot of reasons as to why it won't happen, which I will be going into detail about in a piece later on this week. I'm talking to Ben Jacobs, who is another massive expert in kind of this area, having worked and lived out there and covered it for years. I agree with Mo that it is very much being used as a massive social media ploy. And I was very critical of Daniel Ek's kind of proposed move for Arsenal. I mean, Arsene Wenger himself summed it up best during the period when Daniel Ek was being linked. He said something along the lines of, these things, when they happen, go on behind closed doors. You do not see this type of talk in the public domain about successful takeovers. No. This stuff is being used because people know the response that Arsenal fans are going to have to it. They're going to jump on the back of it. Go on, Shane.
Tom, would you agree with me that if and when these things happen, first thing that all parties are forced to do is sign confidentiality form and non-disclosures, and that's it. You're not allowed to talk about it.
I feel like that would make the most sense.
That is the case.
It is. I can't see why it wouldn't be the case. It is. I do get the same feeling as the people I've spoken to, that the tweets are being used to drum up interest. I mean, think about how many times you saw the words "buy Spotify Premium" on your timeline when Daniel Ek was interested. I saw hundreds of tweets like, "Give him the money, help him buy Arsenal, get rid of the Cronkies." There's other stuff that I need to be more educated about, kind of the Qatari situation, especially with what's going on with the controversy of the World Cup and that side of things, because I put a tweet out the other day. I did a poll. I don't know if you saw this on my
personal
I saw
account.
that. It got something like 1,700 votes on it, which isn't loads, but it's a decent sample size. I didn't mention any specific person. I didn't mention any specific nationality. I didn't mention any specific whoever. It was a vague tweet that said, would you be against an owner taking over the club that had association to human rights atrocities? I didn't say about whoever it was. And it was a near dead split between people. And people would genuinely not be fussed if whoever was to take over the club had links to human rights atrocities. And what really frustrated me was people justified it by pointing out that Stan Kroenke and KSE or Walmart or any of his associative companies have their own links. That's not a justification.
Yeah, brilliant.
I want them out as... I want them out as well because of those links. I want in any possible way for Arsenal to be owned by a legitimate person. I use the word person. It's anyone that can be in charge of Arsenal. If there is any slight, tiny, teeny percentage of hope that Arsenal could be owned and controlled by someone legit, I want that. I'm not giving up my principles of not wanting someone that's like got all of this stuff going on in the world. That's not good enough. And just because our current owner's not the best guy in the world doesn't mean I'm willing to then accept someone to take over as equally or worse than them. I'm aiming for better.
Brilliantly said.
Shaheen.
Lev, just before I come to you, I just want to clarify something.
Yeah,
I wasn't knocking the space that I was listening to because it was done by a gal and the Gooner Express. It was actually quite good. It was just this person who came on and he claimed to have spoken to the person who's going to take over and all of that rubbish. And there were people who actually listening to it. That's my point, was that why people don't use their noddle to think a little bit. Go on, Lev.
Well, it's funny that Tom mentioned that poll, because I was actually going to refer to it, Tom, because it was a great poll. It was thought enticing, and I was quite intrigued to see how it would turn out. And I wasn't surprised because, let's be honest, people really in the comfort of their own homes, they've got to this point now. They don't really care what's going on outside of it, and that's the realities, the harsh realities of this world. The difficult thing is finding billionaires who are clean, who haven't done anything dodgy in this world to get to where they got to. And my question, when we looked at this poll, was, obviously I could see where Tom was going with it, but then I had to look at the club and see whether the club would be against taking somebody on from Qatar or someone with human rights sort of violations or atrocities sort of in the background. Would the club go there? And my concern is, if someone from Qatar did come in with the money and the Cronkies were willing to sell, would Arsenal stop it? And I have some serious doubts with that, because we've seen how they've managed certain situations over the last year or two. For example, the Ozil situation, who I believe strongly was chastised and used as a scapegoat, not because of his playing inability or the fact that he was on the wane. Because let's be honest, if you look at some of the players that have been playing for us consistently these last year or two, you cannot tell me that Ozil wouldn't have added something to that, especially with the likes of Aubameyang up top. This was a political and a marketing issue in the sense of China and their money and the sponsorship deals and threatening to pull that if Ozil continued with what he was doing, and also if he was playing. I even heard, I read a Reuters article that literally said they don't want to bite the hand that feeds them, and the minute Ozil come out with what he did, they gave an ultimatum to Arsenal to say, look, if he carries on playing, we're going to pull the money that we put into TV deals. And on top of that, they cut Arsenal live games from China, right? So then if you look at that, then you start to go into a total minefield of questions in regards to what Tom brought up, in the sense of, if a Qatari billionaire came in who had very questionable background, or someone like Dan Goat or anyone came in with that type of issue, would they stop that? And I have serious doubts that they would. I just think it would be all about the money, and this is where the Kroenke situation has taken us.
Yeah, when you say would Arsenal stop it, it's not for Arsenal to stop it, because what is Arsenal? It's Stan Kroenke. So it's a case of Stan Kroenke will just accept.
If the money is good, Mo is right.
That's where we are now, Mo. It's no longer the Arsenal anymore, is it?
But the thing is, I think Tom's poll is so interesting. As you say, it's very thought-provoking, because if people said, if the poll said, do you want Arsenal to be in the position that Chelsea are in, we'd all say yes. But look how Chelsea have got there. They've got there through an owner who has contributed £100 million to organisations that are in breach of international law. Do you think Chelsea fans care?
No.
So, but of course, we want to be where Chelsea are, yet 50% of us, according to Tom's poll, don't want that. So, of course, I don't want to have a morally corrupt owner in charge of the club. But as we know, for example, Kroenke, he's donated to, let's say, Donald Trump's presidential fund, for example. Now, whether you think that's morally corrupt or not, whatever, I personally think Donald Trump's racist. So yes, I think that is morally corrupt. But the point is, it's going to be, as you say, hard to find someone that is acceptable.
That's the conflict, Mo, isn't it? And this is why I don't want to come out of this show where people think I'm trying to put myself on some pedestal and I think I'm some like saint. I'm not. If you said to me that, say, an owner with links to human rights atrocities took over the club, and you asked me, would I stop supporting Arsenal if that person took over? The honest answer for me is no. I wouldn't, and that makes me a massive hypocrite. The same thing goes for lots of things. Like I can't justify not being vegan, for instance, but I still eat meat. Like I'm a massive hypocrite. So I don't want to come out of this show with people thinking I'm trying to put myself on some pedestal.
Yeah, but Tom, hasn't the sport sold its soul anyway? I mean, if you want to look at it right across the board, the minute the likes of
you try and draw the line, though, this for me, it's about when the next opportunity to draw the line comes. Do you take that opportunity to draw the line?
Did Wenger not try with this self-sufficient, this self-sustaining model that hasn't worked out?
Mo, Levs, this is a very interesting point. Let me just put it up. So this is a sign that Arsenal apparently there's a lot of issues in Rwanda and this and that, but Arsenal are quite happy to take the money, put them on the shirt and move on, which is something in support of what Mo said, that if the offer on the table is good for Stan, he's not going to care if he's come from Qataris, Saudis. He will just take it and he will bail.
If you want to look at it from a political perspective, it's pointless now, I think.
We've got to look at the only takeover deal that I can think of that wasn't allowed to go through was not because of the club. It was in Newcastle with the Saudis, right? That was the Premier League that blocked it, as far as I know. So there is a fit and proper persons test, but Mike Ashley is not going to say no to an inflated offer for his club out of some moral decency, is he? So... But you know what? I feel like we're getting a bit sidetracked. The point is,
we are.
This is a massive hypothetical, and the point is about these people. What annoys me is the disrespect with which they treat the club. Whether it's rolling up into positions that they're not qualified to be in out of their entitlement, whether it's treating Arsenal like some sort of toy based on their based on how used they are of getting what they want and their wealth and being able to say and do anything. Again, their entitlement, it really frustrates me. And I don't think any of them are truly serious because, as you made the point, Shaheen, the reality is you're going to sign a non-disclosure agreement. You're not going to be tweeting about it on Twitter, joining spaces, talking about it. So, but this is how desperate that we are. This is how desperate we are as Arsenal fans.
Unfortunately, people are picking up on it more. Yeah, they're using us. They troll us. We've got a hard time as it is. We don't need somebody to come and rub it in and put pictures of Invincibles and all that. But just on this takeover, one last point. Let's say if this Qatari thing was true, they came and they even purchased Arsenal, right? Put some money into the club. We'll qualify for Champions League. We get drawn the same groove as PSG. Wouldn't that be conflict of interest? Is that not? Because as far as I know, that's not really allowed.
Think about who our sponsor is as well.
Yeah, it is. With Usmanov, he had a stake in Arsenal, and that's why when him and Farhad Mashiri started to acquire Everton, it was all done in Mashiri's name because that you're not allowed to own two clubs. Now, it would all depend. They're very smart. They're very intelligent. That money will be divided up into a separate legal entity, and they'll have that separation. So that's what I mean. You'll see a lot of arrangements in clubs with feeder clubs and that sort of thing.
Yeah.
It
Well, look,
wouldn't be an issue.
moving forward, right? We don't have a lot of time left, so let's see if we
Got
can
sidetracked.
Let's see. No, because the conversation was actually really so good that
Tom's
we
fault.
lost track of time. So, as Arsenal Football Club, right? How do we move forward? We've got 1 day left in the transfer window.
Can we talk about just before we do that? Can we talk about Ainsley Maitland-Niles? We cannot.
This is part of it. This is part of it. What do you do? There's a lot of players who want to go, a lot of players who want to come in. Maitland-Niles will come out and say that statement, which is telling, in my view. What would each of you? What advice would you give the board?
To change the manager, and I can't say anything.
You've
else.
got a day left of the transfer window. What would you do?
Well, the obvious thing is that invest in a better right back and a better centre midfielder. That's the only thing I can like.
But realistically, Tom, do you see it happening? Do you see
Absolutely
realistically?
not.
Do you see anybody coming in?
I'd maybe see one possible loan. That's about it. But I don't see Arsenal investing heavily in a key position that we need. We've left it too. I think ultimately the club's gambled on a transfer window, thinking that they'd get offers for players that haven't arrived, and they haven't been able to bring in as much money as they wanted to. And that means that when they had kind of this plan, I mean, do you remember back in, I think it was May, that Arteta talked about the plan that he'd made with Edu, and yet we're scrounging around at the end of the window like we were, honestly, at the end of last summer with Thomas Partey, and we only got lucky there because he had a buyout clause. So it's an impossible question, Shin, because to say what we would do now, like we've all said that we would change the manager and we would change what's going on, but even if we were to do that, as we said, I don't trust anyone to make the right choice with what happens next. It's horrible being an Arsenal fan right now, frankly. It's horrible.
So realistically,
Sorry, Tom, you've nailed it. It really is. I don't know if other people feel like that share that sentiment that Tom has just said there, but it really does feel horrible to be an Arsenal fan right now.
Yeah, and you know what, Mo? We've seen other clubs like Chelsea going out there bringing Lukaku back, Man United bringing Ronaldo back. Liverpool signing players. Man City were in for Kane. They signed players, and we're sitting here thinking, one, we don't really have anybody to bring back, and people going back to Gnabry. They say, "No, let's bring him back." So that's how we've got to go back. And also, we're just sitting. It's like we're sitting and watching all of this unfold in front of us, and we're watching it with envy. And then we look at our transfer business, looking at this, thinking, right, we spend more than these guys, but yet we're bottom of the table and we're worse than last year. So this is my question. Realistically, Lev, what do you see happening tomorrow?
Well, I see what Tom was saying, and in the sense of we've been trying to offload people to try and get people in, but I don't entirely buy that as a good enough excuse, because there are ways that if we were shrewd and smart, we still could have done deals. For example, there's apparently teams touting for Bellerin, right? I think I heard potentially the Barca could be coming in for Bellerin if Emerson Royale goes to Tottenham. Well, why the hell, if they want, for example, Bellerin, why are we not doing that deal? Why are we not saying, "Oh, here, you can have Bellerin. Well, let's do a deal there." There's a deal that could be made there. It's ridiculous that they don't do that. If you're not going to get Huasimua, which I'm hearing it might not happen, then solidify your midfield. When you sold Willock, you still could have gone and got Basuma or someone like that and made your midfield stronger. I don't buy these excuses in the sense of not bringing in certain types of players to make our first team stronger. I am very doubtful about what's going to happen tomorrow. I'll be surprised if we don't bring in somebody, but I don't want it to be a panic buy. How many panic buys have we done at the end of a window?
Well,
go on.
Apparently, Nketiah to Palace has fallen through. It's not going to happen.
Well, there's another one you mentioned.
Reece Nelson is on his way to Feyenoord.
Right.
On a season-long loan. So Willian has cancelled his own contract.
The Nketiah thing is the Edu crux. Like when I asked you earlier about where we can work out whether Edu's doing a good job, that Nketiah deal is a perfect example to argue that he's not. Because let's be real, Nketiah has 1 year left on his deal. He's barely played a minute of senior football. We've offered him a new contract. He's rejected it. How much is he worth? I don't think he's worth anything more than 10 million. If that, I think we'd be lucky to get 10 million quid, to be honest. And we've rejected it, hoping to get double that. I can't stagger that decision.
And guess what? Guess
Another
what?
one is
Palace.
Maitland-Niles, £20 million last season, and we're like, no, but you're not getting a game either.
Well, Palace apparently, if they don't get Nketiah, they're going to go for Edouard, right? So why not give them Nketiah for 10 mil, and you go and get Edouard and get a different striker that gives you a different dimension that you've been complaining you don't have.
Yeah.
There's
Would you agree with me, Mo, that you know we've got to pay his respect to Willian for tearing up his contract and saving Arsenal money in the process and moving on, saying, you know what, I don't want to be here, forget the contract, I'm just going to move on.
Yeah, do you know what? It's really like people need to be really honest with themselves, right? A lot of us don't like Willian because he's almost like the biggest sort of sign of everything bad about Arsenal in the Arteta regime, right? But you have to separate your feelings from him. If you think about it, he's actually done nothing wrong. He was offered a really, really good contract that he should never have been offered, and he took the opportunity. I would have taken it. You three would have taken it. Everyone here would have taken that. And then he could have sat there at that point. And the one thing I would say is that if we assume that he has always tried, and no, whether he's failed every single time he's gone out on the pitch, if we just assume that he's being a professional and he's tried, then he's done nothing wrong. Now for him to actually say, fine, I will just leave because he's not happy here and all that sort of stuff, then I think fair play to him, man. You have to give him a little bit of credit, irrespective of whether you like him or not or how you feel about him. Good on him, because he could have been really, really greedy and stayed in a country and in a city where his family is settled and everything and just raked in the cash. So I don't like him. I'm desperate for him to leave, but I can be objective enough and say, good on him. Well done. And thank you.
Yeah. And your thoughts on transfer window tomorrow?
I've got no idea whether we'll do anything. On one hand, I think to myself, when I look at the fact that we're 20th, let me just remind you of all of that. Yeah. We're 20th in the league. No team needs to buy players more than we do. We are bottom. So on that basis, I think, well, of course we will. But then I think to myself, but do we even have any money left? Do I trust Edu to be creative and lateral thinking, like I was saying earlier, and get someone on loan or this or that or whatever? Do I trust that? No. So yes, the need is there, but the trust isn't. So I just don't know, I'm afraid, guys.
Well, Lev, just before I come to you, guys, please hit the like, subscribe to our channel, subscribe to Tom, subscribe to Mo. They've got also really good channels. You know, give them a follow. Watch their content is really good. As I said earlier, if you're watching this video afterwards on a replay, please comment on a below if you're gonna get rid of Arteta today, or you're gonna give him more time. Lev.
Well, firstly, there's over 800 people in here. We've only got 178 likes. Come on, step up the likes for us.
Poor, guys.
Come on, that's poor, guys. Like, we do our best to get you the best content, show you appreciation, give us some likes. I'd love that. With regards to the transfer window tomorrow, I'm not holding out much hope. I mean, I think it'll be crazy if we don't get somebody in, especially either right back or an attacking midfielder. How are we going to go into the rest of the season with Chambers and Cedric? And let's be honest here, I think our best right back is Ainsley Maitland-Niles, and that's the crazy thing to say.
We need to talk about that properly. We need to talk about this whole thing.
He's our best right. No. Do you know what, Mo? I 100% agree. Listen, for a majority of the time when he was called upon, he performed admirably for us in a position he weren't supposed to. I don't understand his treatment. I don't understand why we would let him go. I'd rather lose Chambers than Ainsley Maitland-Niles right now if we're not going to bring in another right back. So I think the way he's been treated has been abysmal. I can't understand it, so I'm sure he can't understand it. I think that's where Mo's going with it.
You know, it is crazy though, isn't it? Like, the result against Man City was bad enough, yeah? And then kind of there's been one day and Arteta must be kind of thinking like, boy, God, life is tough right now. And as you get further away from the game, you hope that kind of people just relax a tiny bit. And then all of a sudden, boom, one Instagram post, Arsenal, I can't even call it Arsenal Twitter, the Arsenal circus, you know, the club, the fans, everything. It's just a massive circus. And now this thing happens. And again, what I find interesting is that you've seen the pressure, all the noise is not about Maitland-Niles. He's done something where people could call into account his professionalism. And, you know, you three, you can let me know whether you think that he's wrong in what you did. but I haven't seen many people criticising him. All the criticism that I've seen is really on Arteta and the club, and it just goes to show that's where we are right now. But you see, I'm curious, people in the comments as well, before I kind of pass it over to one of you guys. Do you guys blame Ainsley Maitland-Niles for what he's done? Are you supportive of him, or are you angry at him as a fan? Because when we take it back to Xhaka, what he did, for example, I was really annoyed at Xhaka for what he did. Even though I can understand on a human level the reaction, I was really annoyed. But actually, do you know what? I don't care that Maitland-Niles did what he did. And I think it speaks volumes for me personally of just how poor, yet another example, just how poor Arteta's man management is. Because how many times did this happen in Arsene Wenger's reign? I know social media didn't exist for a long time of that, but people weren't acting up as much as we've seen with Arteta. What is it about Arteta that he can't seem to just get players sort of their loyalty and develop a good relationship where these things don't happen? So yeah, let me know.
You know what, Mo, and I just want to add to that. It also shows another thing is that how Arteta is on a thin ice. So one comment, one post, and everybody's like, "Oh, it's his fault. It's his fault. It's his doing. It's his doing." So it shows that he doesn't have fans of support either. And Maitland-Niles, and in support of what Tom was saying earlier with regards to Edu, I don't know why we didn't take that £20 million that was on the table.
But let's focus on the post, Shane. Let's focus because
the post. It shows that what the guy is feeling.
Talking about this, guys. Yeah.
See, all I want is go somewhere where I'm wanted and where I'm going to play. And
you know what? It was followed up by this as well. Hold on. It was followed up by Ornstein saying he understands Maitland-Niles has stated from the start of the season he'd like to play solely as a fullback.
Yeah,
so he said, I've made my mistake. Maybe I was thinking too much to be in a centre midfielder. I broke into the England team as a fullback. Give me another chance. No?
Yeah, well, it just shows that the player's treatment is not right. He's not feeling wanted or loved by the club, which is the first thing that you do to a player to get the best out of him. That's what you do.
Guys, Lev, you're the one that put stuff on screen. Go on Arsenal.com. Show us the homepage. Whilst he does that, everyone smash the likes button because trust me, you're going to like what you're seeing now. It's not as good as what it could. It's not as good as what you want. It's not about Arteta, but please smash that like button in advance because you're going to love what you see.
Okay, so let's have a look.
Boy, you made a. Should I do share a screen, Lev?
There
Lev,
you go.
what?
This. Got it?
Is that the one?
Yeah, there it is. It's official, live on the Arsenal Lounge. We announce it.
That is a relief.
But you know what? Another question that comes out for me very quickly, right? We all know that Willian was a quality player in his time, right? Let's be honest. He was quality when he was at Chelsea and at Shakhtar before that.
6 years ago, Lev.
Come on. It was 6 years ago. But the question then you ask is he that bad? Or looking at some of the performances we've had on the field, is it, again, down to Arteta's management and the way he's been playing him?
No. Willian was exceptionally bad.
He was.
Yeah,
not going to be. Fair play, Willie.
Lev, do you want to read out the super chat?
Yeah, of course. This is from Passion. $10. Thank you so much for your super chat. I'm supporting him, Maitland. He could have gone last year and more than likely was promised to play and didn't. Now left back playing ahead of him, etc. I support Mainsley. Well, if I think it means Ainsley.
Tom, what's your thoughts on him? You've been quiet on this.
I'm quiet because I hate when I see posts like this. Like I really dislike it because obviously you analyze them individually. Say you take it on its own, like it's not professional. Would be the thing I'd say about it individually. You don't want to see like employees at the club saying like if it was in any other workspace. Can you imagine about saying that you want to leave, going onto social media and tweeting an image of how much you want to leave because you want to go somewhere where you're wanted? It doesn't happen. It's not professional. However, the balance to the argument is that, as Mo said, this is happening at a stupidly frequent rate. Like we are seeing it time after time after time. Guendouzi, we're seeing it with Saliba, we're seeing it with Xhaka, we're seeing it with Ainsley Maitland-Niles now. This Nketiah situation with Crystal Palace is crazy. We're seeing the players crumble from a mental standpoint against Manchester City. Aubameyang coming out after the game saying that we play without pride, that there's no pride in the team at the moment. It is the word crisis in Arsenal gets thrown around a lot, but this is genuinely a crisis. It's a genuine socio-economic crisis at Arsenal because it comes from the way in which we've used our money. and the way in which we're treating the players. From my perspective, Arteta is an incredibly inexperienced coach. You can tell that from what you see with his management now. You can tell what you see from the press conference and how he responds to questions and how he talks about his own players in press conferences. And I really think I last season, as I've talked about, I was very defensive of him because I think I just really desperately wanted to see it succeed. And it hasn't done. And I think that you can see with the evidence that is mounting every single time we play and we hear him speak that things are not going well. And I hope for players like Mainsley, and I say Mainsley because it's a nickname for a channel that we've called it, so maybe that's why he said Mainsley.
Inside jokes, yeah, inside jokes
Sorry,
here,
guys.
lads. Oh god.
But it's I hope that Arteta, in a way, goes. Not that I want, like, obviously I wanted to turn things around as always, but for players like Saliba, if Arteta goes, there's a tiny part of me that feels you never know that could turn around, that could change. Like Saliba could end up staying and succeeding. You never know. You could see Matteo Guendouzi change his mind, and you never know what could happen with that. So I'm not saying that all of these actions that the players have made are always going to be right, but when it's in an environment which breeds rebellion, which I feel like Arsenal is right now, it's almost a case of how much longer can you really point the fingers towards the players' individual actions when there's so many different ones to point to?
Yeah, there's one consistent, isn't there? There's one consistent factor there, and that's Arteta. And sorry, Shaheen, to say something, but there was also rumours that Aubameyang and the players were having a sort of secret meeting today. And
Crisis
one thing we
meeting.
didn't, crisis. And one thing we didn't mention,
3 games into a league, you're having a crisis meeting.
and one thing we didn't mention was also, and I have to drop this because I know he's your boy, this guy.
Oh God, yeah.
Yeah. I mean,
Well,
he's making a statement there himself, isn't
about
he?
what happened at Arsenal.
Can I just say on that Mesut Ozil one, right? It's so interesting because I think he's very clever because it's how you read that. I read that as he's twisting the knife in Arteta, but I read that because obviously I know the context, just as you guys obviously know the context between Arteta freezing him out for football reasons. We were desperate for a creative midfielder. He still didn't play him, didn't select him in the Premier League squad. It was just like really, really adding insult to Mesut Ozil. But I saw other people take that as, oh, Ozil feels the same way as us. You know, he's heartbroken.
Yeah.
To me, it was quite clear.
No, I think he was saying, I knew this process weren't going to work. And that's how I read it.
It's a hat told you so. It's a Nelson from The Simpsons going, ha ha,
so
that's what it is.
Yeah. But, you know, just quickly going back to the Maitland-Niles thing, right? Because for me, that's the huge story today. Like Tom said, you don't want to see that. Even though I support Maitland-Niles to an extent, you know, you don't want to see that. Because obviously it's embarrassing for the club that this is going on, but ultimately what it shows is that he's literally saying, it's actually quite sad, he's literally saying just somewhere where I'm wanted. Now, if, for example, one of us left the Arsenal lounge and we put that out there, that, oh, I just wanted to be somewhere I was wanted, that would
problems, my
really
friend.
poorly about the other three, or it would speak really poorly about the person who runs the Arsenal lounge, wouldn't it?
Yeah.
Shane, would you want that heat on you if Tom said that?
I just want to go somewhere with more green screens. That's all I want.
No. Listen, look, Mo, I agree with you. And it also shows that this guy is being left so frustrated that even he knows this is a wrong thing that he's doing, yet he's coming out and he's putting it out there. So maybe he's trying to put pressure on the club to get rid of him.
Yeah, exactly, yeah.
I think he's been advised to do that. I think his agents advised him, to be honest. I think that's
maybe,
an absolute tactic. Yeah.
But the point is irrespective, right? It's like
Absolutely.
It's like when someone comes up asking for money when you're sat down at a restaurant, yeah? Some people will be like, oh, they shouldn't be doing that. And I kind of think to myself, well, it's a real shame that they're feeling the need to do that, you know? And it's like this with Maitland-Niles. Like, he's begging here. It's just a real shame that this is what he thinks is now his best chance of making something happen. It shouldn't come to this. He should be talking to Arteta. He should be having, like, an arm around his shoulder, a proper conversation where it's a case of, listen, I understand your issues. I see where you're coming from. We'll try and resolve this for you, rather than being at home putting something on his Instagram story. It's shocking, man management.
Mo. Yeah, it's
Exactly.
definitely man management.
We've got a couple of super chats. Just read them out before we'll call it a day, really. So you got Charles SB. Thank you very much. for your super chat. The big thing I hate about the club is social media team. They love to gaslight fans and they cry when harsh criticism is directed at them. That is
In what
true.
way? I want to know, Chan. Like, give me an example, whatever example you've got in your mind in terms of how they gaslight fans, just out of interest.
Yeah. The other one, Mo, big fan from Morocco. You guys live in London, can't do more organized protests. We, the rest of the fans outside the UK, feel helpless.
Oh boy.
I probably
Tom,
haven't
you
heard
laugh.
that one before.
I was at the stadium. I was at the stadium before the Chelsea game, covering the protest for FL, and it was pathetic, quite frankly. And that's not me describing the people that attended as pathetic. They are the absolute opposite of that word. It's absolute respect to the people that took the time to show, because there was an opportunity there. First game of the season, you could have organised something, but it was put together ultimately by people that weren't going. It was people that were looking, and just as we talked about earlier, of kind of ownership takeovers and Arsenal being used as clout, the opportunity to protest is now something that is being joyrided by people looking for retweets and likes, and it's a shame that that's now happened, because it's undermining the movement.
That's such a very, very good point, because you can't trust what you see on social media as a reflection of the match day going fans. You know, people, when it comes to social media, like Thomas just said, when they talk about protests and everything like that, they boost their own profile. They get more retweets and likes. When it's in person, what it actually means is that you have to wake up a bit earlier, leave your home a bit earlier, give up something in your day to get there 90 minutes sooner than you otherwise would have, for example. So when you're talking about it on social media, it benefits you. When you're actually doing it, it's more of a selfless act, and it's actually an inconvenience to your day. And there's a big, big difference there. And unfortunately, that's why it doesn't translate. So it's a really good point that was made in that super chat. We do need to be doing that. And I think as fans, as the match-going fans, I feel like we get a lot of criticism from fans that aren't able to go to matches, who are across the world. And in a way, perhaps I agree that we're letting them down. We should be doing more.
Yeah.
Well, listen, on that point, I want the same energy by the fans here that we use to go towards other channels, and that sort of ferociousness and that commitment, rather than waste your energy on that. Put your energy into something positive and go where the problem lies, which is at the board's feet and the management and everyone in the club from behind the scenes, rather than chase people who've got YouTube channels and all that. It's just nonsensical.
Okay. Well, guys, we've been going a bit longer than usual.
Yeah.
So thank you everybody for watching the show. Subscribe obviously to our channel, Mo's channel, Tom's channel. Hit the like here. If you're watching this after, please comment what would you do with Mikel Arteta at this point. Just to summarize what we discussed, we all want Arteta. We all said he needs to be sacked. If we had the power, we would have done it. We're all very disappointed with Man City tactics and personnel, and we all don't really have any high hopes for tomorrow, unfortunately. So that's it for me. Guys, do you want to say anything to conclude?
No, I'm just Googling Corinthians so I can go and get a shirt with Willian on the back. I'm so happy.
I've got something, Shaheen. We've got a show coming up on Wednesday.
I want to come to you last. Hold on.
Okay, come to me last.
Tom?
Yeah, I mean, I'm going live in 10 minutes. So if you want to carry on the conversation, you can join us over there.
Well,
there
you
go.
know what?
Love that.
The show. Lev.
Yes. Join us Wednesday for a new show called Midweek Peak. Basically, we're going to be looking at the week's news. Each guest will be looking at the positive, a highlight, and a low light, and we'll be discussing each guest's highlights and lowlights. So please join us Wednesdays at 7 p.m. for Midweek Sneak Peek. There you go.
Very good.
And thanks for joining us.
We all love you. Thank you very much for watching us. Thank you very much for supporting us. We're very grateful for your support. And hopefully, Arsenal will do something tomorrow that will ease the pain a little bit. I'll doubt it, but we can only hope. So again, thank you for watching the Arsenal Lounge. I'm Shaheen. That's my co-host and presenter and editor and producer, Lev. Tom from Gooner Talk TV, Mo Haidar. Have a wonderful evening. I hope you had a bank holiday as well. And we'll see you guys on Wednesday.